Hello, everyone, I'm Kenshin. Welcome to Talking History. Please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Also, don't forget to turn on the notification bell. Thank you. Today's historical discussion is about Stauffenberg's nearly successful assassination attempt on Hitler. As the Russian invasion of Ukraine enters its third year and Ukraine suffers from the ravages of war, the lives of the leaders on both sides have been under threat since the first year. According to reports from the New York Post and the British Daily Star, citing the Times of London, Ukrainian President Zelensky faced at least 3 assassination threats in 1 week in 2022, with 2 groups attempting assassinations, including the Russian Wagner Group mercenary organization mentioned earlier by Kenshin and the Chechen Special Forces. The Wagner mercenaries orchestrated 2 assassination attempts. Fortunately, all 3 assassination attempts were thwarted in advance, reportedly due to leaks from anti-war elements within the Russian Federal Security Service to Ukraine, which led to the thwarting of the assassination plans. Oleksiy Danilov, Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, told local media, "We received information from people within the Russian Federal Security Service who did not want to participate in this bloody war. Thanks to this, the elite team of Kadyrov was destroyed, who came here to assassinate our president." This also indicates that there is internal dissatisfaction in Russia with Putin and his regime. Even insiders close to the Wagner Group revealed that Zelensky's security team's accuracy in predicting actions was legitimate. Kadyrov, a Russian businessman now living in the United States, recently offered a reward, starting at $1 million in 2022, dead or alive, for the capture of Putin. The 55-year-old Qianxin was a financial tycoon during Yeltsin's era in Russia. In 1992, he left Russia with his wife and obtained political asylum in the United States. He criticized Putin, saying, "Putin is not the president of Russia, because he came to power by bombing apartment buildings in Russia's special operations and violated the constitution by canceling free elections and murdering competitors." United States Senator Lindsey Graham, while appearing on Fox News with host Sean Hannity, suggested assassinating Putin as a solution to the crisis. He later tweeted that Putin should be assassinated by his own people, claiming it to be the only way to end the crisis. Graham asked, "Does Russia have a Brutus to assassinate Caesar? Does the Russian military have a Stauffenberg to assassinate Hitler, who failed?" Today, I, Qianxin, will discuss the actions of Colonel Stauffenberg, who nearly ended World War II prematurely. Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg, a member of the German nobility like many other senior German officers at the time, held the title of Count. His family was one of the oldest and most distinguished Catholic aristocratic families in southern Germany. After the outbreak of World War II, his unit was incorporated into the 6th Panzer Division. He served as a staff officer in the General Staff during operations in France and was later awarded the Iron Cross First Class, like many others, for his admiration of Hitler's leadership and overwhelming victories. While fighting in North Africa during the Tunisia campaign, he was severely injured in an Allied air raid, losing an eye and a hand. Upon returning to Nazi Germany, he was decorated, but by then, he was no longer a loyal Nazi. The failure of Operation Barbarossa and the increasing deficiencies of the German army led him to join resistance movements within the military in 1942, the only chance to overthrow the armed forces of the Gestapo, the security police, and the SS. Having witnessed firsthand the atrocities committed by the Nazis in the Eastern Front, particularly the mass murder of Jews, he was deeply affected. Believing that Hitler could no longer lead Germany, he assisted in revising the Valkyrie plan, aimed at assassinating Hitler and assuming control of Germany afterward. Other participants in the coup included Field Marshal von Witzleben, General Beck, and General von Huttner. From September 1943 to July 20, 1944, he was the leader of the assassination operation. However, he was well aware that under German law, this act constituted treason, yet he invoked natural law to prove himself right, claiming it was done to protect millions from Hitler's aggressive actions. When co-conspirator General Helmut Stieff failed to kill Hitler at the Salzburg Uniform Exhibition on July 7, 1944, he decided to personally execute the assassination in Berlin. Despite his doubts about the likelihood of success, Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg firmly believed that even if the plan failed, it must be carried out. The reason being, the plan must be executed. Even if we fail, we must take action in Berlin. This was the only way to prove to the world that not all Germans supported Hitler's regime. Stauffenberg wrote in his diary, "Those who do this must understand that people may call us traitors, but if we don't act, we are traitors to our conscience." The operation was codenamed Operation Valkyrie, also known as the famous Valkyrie Operation. Originally, he planned to report to Hitler face-to-face in his capacity as Chief of Staff of the Reserve Army, which also meant overseeing Operation Valkyrie personally at the Reserve Army headquarters. Initially, many officers who could meet Hitler expressed their willingness to carry out the assassination mission. Originally, General Stieff volunteered for the assassination mission, but he failed to find an opportunity during the July 7 operation. Counter-conspirator General Treskow's multiple attempts to move the Wolf's Lair were unsuccessful, forcing Stauffenberg to assume both planning and execution duties. He originally hoped to assassinate Hitler, Himmler, and Göring when they gathered, but the opportunity did not arise. He decided to carry out the assassination on July 20 at the Wolf's Lair, also known as the July 20th plot or the July 20th conspiracy. That day, carrying a briefcase containing 2 packets of explosives, he entered the briefing room. However, due to the hot weather, the meeting location was moved from the fortress's concrete building to a small wooden hut in Spears area, thwarting the plan to cause a larger explosion using the thick walls of the Wolf's Lair. Nevertheless, he excused himself to go to the restroom to wash up, planning to use pliers to cut the fuse of the pen-shaped detonator and insert a 1 kilogram block of explosives. Hindered by the loss of his right hand and only 3 fingers remaining on his left hand, he struggled to use the pliers. Just then, the guard knocked, urging the meeting to start immediately, so he hurriedly left for the conference room without activating the second explosive. Before the meeting started, he placed the briefcase as close to Hitler's conference table as possible. A few minutes later, he left the meeting room under the pretext of taking a phone call. However, no one expected that after he left, Colonel Heinz Brandt moved the briefcase from its original position to the other side of the conference table corner. Between 12:40 and 12:50, the bomb detonated, destroying the entire conference room. Due to being far from Hitler, the explosion's lethality was reduced, allowing Hitler to escape unharmed. Unfortunately, Brandt, who moved the briefcase, lost his life after having one leg blown off by the explosion, becoming an unwitting victim. 3 officers and the stenographer died in the explosion. The primary target, Hitler, only suffered minor injuries due to the thick corner of the table. His pants were singed, and his eardrums ruptured. Stauffenberg initially believed that no one could have survived in the room, but later, it proved him wrong. Afterward, he swiftly left the Wolf's Lair with Heften, flew back to Berlin from the nearest airport, and then began the second phase of action with his co-conspirators, launching a military coup against Nazi leaders. Although everything went smoothly at first, Goebbels' broadcast announcing Hitler's survival led him to realize the coup failed. They engaged in a shootout with Otto Ernst Riemer and others along the Bendler Strasse corridor. Stauffenberg was wounded in the shoulder and eventually captured. The next day, Stauffenberg and 200 co-plotters were arrested and executed. This unsuccessful coup also implicated 2 German field marshals, Rommel and Kluge. On July 20, 2019, the Berlin German Resistance Memorial Center held a grand event to commemorate Colonel Stauffenberg, who attempted to assassinate Hitler during World War II but tragically failed. German Chancellor Merkel and Stauffenberg's son attended the ceremony. Merkel stated that the 75th anniversary of the July 20th plot not only reminds people to remember all those who acted on that day, but also to honor every hero who stood up against Nazi rule. Stauffenberg's son, Bertold, recalled hearing on the radio about a small group of criminals and British officials next day, his mother pulled him and his siblings aside, calmly stating that it was your father who placed the bomb, emphasizing that he believed it was necessary for Germany. That night, the Gestapo came knocking, and his mother, grandmother, and uncle were all arrested, while he and his siblings were sent to a children's home. However, one thing I am very clear about is that I never considered my father a criminal, Berthold stated. George Graham tweeted, "The only way to end the Russo-Ukrainian war is for someone in Russia to get rid of this guy Putin, and stated, he would be doing a great service for your country and the whole world." Graham then continued in his tweet, "The only person who can solve this crisis is the Russian people." It sounds simple, but it's hard to do. Unless you want to live in darkness for the rest of your life, living in extreme poverty isolated from the rest of the world, you need to rise to the challenge. However, there are opposing views. Rob Lee, a doctoral student in the War Studies Department at King's College London and an expert in Russian defense policy, criticized in a tweet that the best strategy for the US to help Ukraine is to persuade Putin. He argued that de-escalating the conflict is a lower-cost, lower-risk option compared to continuing the Russo-Ukrainian war, and he warned that regime change or assassination could backfire. Regardless of the validity of these opinions, let's take a look at how Putin meets with his top officials. Recently, the Associated Press released several photos of Putin meeting with government officials at the Kremlin after the war against Ukraine. Notably, Putin sat at one end of a long table, with other officials sitting at the opposite end several meters away, maintaining an ultra-safe social distance. The middle seats were all empty, and several cameras were clearly recording the officials' actions, indicating a lack of trust even among these people. Many believe that Putin is simply afraid of assassination, hence the reluctance to let anyone get close, demonstrating the mentality of a dictator. Some even argue that his intent is to portray Ukraine as Nazi-like while positioning himself as the closest person to Hitler.